Hey everyone, welcome back to PM Software and AI Agents. I'm Connor, and today I have to share something that happened to me last month. I was in this team meeting where someone mentioned they'd been spending 2 hours every week manually updating tickets in Jira, moving things between columns, assigning tasks, sending notifications.
Oh no, please tell me someone introduced them to automation.
Well, that's actually where John comes in. John, I immediately thought of you because you've become our resident Jira automation evangelist. Tell me you saved this poor soul from spreadsheet hell?
I hope so. And honestly, Connor, stories like that are why I get so passionate about Jira automation. It's like watching someone dig a hole with a spoon when there's a perfectly good shovel sitting right there.
That's such a perfect analogy. But here's what I don't understand. If automation is so powerful and it's built right into Jira, why are so many people still doing things manually?
You know what I think it is? People assume automation is this super technical thing that requires coding or complex setup. But honestly, most of the automation rules I create are just common sense translated into clicks.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. You probably already have these mental rules, right? Like when someone marks a bug as resolved, I need to notify the QA team. Or when we start a new project, I always create the same 5 subtasks. You're already thinking in terms of if this, then that logic.
Automation is just making those mental rules explicit.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is, once you set it up, it never forgets, never gets tired, never goes on vacation. It just works.
Okay, so let's dive into the practical stuff. What exactly is Jira automation and why should teams care?
At its core, Jira automation is a way to eliminate repetitive tasks by creating rules that trigger actions automatically. But here's why it matters. It's not just about saving time, though that's huge. It's about consistency, accuracy, and freeing up your brain for the work that actually matters.
Can you give me a concrete example of what that looks like?
Sure. Let's say every time a customer reports a bug, you need to assign it to the development team, set the priority based on severity, and notify the product manager. Without automation, someone has to remember to do all those steps every single time.
And they have to do it the same way every time?
Right. With automation, you create one rule that says, when an issue is created with type bug, automatically assign it to the dev team, set priority based on the severity field, and send a notification to the PM. Done. It happens instantly and consistently every time.
I can see how that would boost efficiency, but you mentioned accuracy too. How does automation help with that?
Think about all the little mistakes that happen with manual processes. Someone forgets to update the status, or they assign a task to the wrong person, or they miss sending that important notification. Automation eliminates human error from routine tasks.
And I imagine that builds trust in the system too.
Absolutely. When your data is consistent and your processes are reliable, people actually start trusting what they see in Jira. No more, is this status accurate, or did someone forget to update this?
So let's get practical. How does someone actually create these automation rules? What's the process?
It's actually pretty intuitive once you get the hang of it. Every automation rule has 4 basic components. Well, 3 required ones and 1 optional. You start with a trigger, which is the event that kicks everything off.
And like what kind of events?
Could be anything: issue created, status change, someone adds a comment, a due date approaches. The key is identifying those moments in your workflow where you consistently take the same action.
And then what happens after the trigger?
Next, you set conditions. These are like filters that determine whether the automation should actually run. Maybe you only want the rule to apply to certain project types or specific issue priorities.
So it's not just every time this happens, it's every time this happens under these specific circumstances?
Exactly. And this is where you can get really targeted. You might have a rule that only applies to bugs in production or feature requests from VIP customers. The conditions make sure your automation is smart, not just automatic.
Then what?
Then come the actions, what you want to happen when the trigger fires, and the conditions are met. This could be updating fields, sending notifications, creating new issues, even triggering webhooks for integrations with other tools.
And you mentioned a fourth optional component?
Branches and loops, which are for more advanced scenarios. Branches let you work on related issues in parallel, and loops let you repeat actions until some condition is met. Most people won't need these starting out, but they're there when you need more sophisticated workflows.
This sounds manageable, but I'm curious, what are some of the most popular automation rules people create? Like, what are the greatest hits?
Well, there are definitely some classics. One of the most popular is synchronizing parent issues and subtasks. When you update something on the main issue, it automatically reflects in all the related subtasks.
That sounds like it would prevent a lot of confusion.
Huge time saver and prevents things from getting out of sync. Another popular one is due date reminders. Instead of manually checking what's coming due, you set up automated notifications to ping people a few days before deadlines.
What else?
Automatically closing completed issues is another big one. When something gets marked as done or resolved, it can automatically move to closed status and clean up your boards. And then there's coordinating between different teams, like automatically creating a dev ticket when a support issue comes in.
That last one sounds really useful for organizations with multiple departments.
It's a game changer for cross-team communication. Instead of support having to manually create tickets in the dev project or development not knowing about customer issues, everything flows automatically with full traceability.
Can we walk through a specific example? I learn better when I can see the whole process.
Sure, let's say you want to automatically create subtasks whenever someone creates a new project issue. This is super common because most projects have standard tasks that always need to happen.
Like, what kind of standard tasks?
Maybe set up development environment, create test plan, schedule kickoff meeting, create documentation folder, whatever your team always does for new projects.
Okay, so how would you set that up?
First, you'd create a trigger for issue created. Then you'd add a condition like issue type equals project, so it only applies to project issues, not bugs or other stuff. Then your action would be create issue, and you define each subtask you want created.
And you can automatically populate some of the fields in those subtasks.
Absolutely. You can transfer data from the parent issue, like the assignee due date, priority level. You can even set default assignees for specific types of subtasks. Maybe all setup development environment tasks always go to your DevOps person.
That's pretty slick. What about keeping the parent and subtasks in sync?
That's where you might add another action to link them properly and set up synchronization rules. When the parent issue status changes, maybe you want all the subtasks to update their status too, or vice versa.
And this is starting to make sense. But I'm sure there are pitfalls people run into. What are the common mistakes?
The biggest one is creating rules that are too broad or too complex right off the bat. I see people trying to automate everything at once and ending up with rules that trigger in situations they didn't expect.
Like automation gone wrong?
Exactly. Or they create conditions that are too restrictive and then wonder why their automation isn't working. My advice is always to start simple and test with a small subset of issues before rolling out broadly.
What about performance? Can you have too much automation?
You can, but it's less about the number of rules and more about how they're designed. If you have rules that trigger other rules, you can create these cascading chains that slow things down.
Sounds like you need to think about the bigger picture, not just individual rules.
Right, and that's where documentation becomes important. If you have multiple people creating automation rules, you need some way to track what's been automated and how different rules might interact.
Speaking of multiple people, how do you handle governance around automation? Do you let everyone create rules?
That's a really good question. In smaller teams, it's usually fine to let people create their own rules. But in larger organizations, you might want to have some oversight to prevent conflicts or ensure consistency.
What does that oversight look like?
Maybe you have automation champions in each team who understand the broader system. Or you require approval for rules that affect multiple projects. It really depends on your organizational culture and how complex your Jira setup is.
For someone who's listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm convinced, but I don't know where to start, what would you recommend?
Start by observing your own behavior for a week. Every time you find yourself doing the same manual task in Jira, write it down. After a week, look at your list and pick the most annoying or time-consuming one to automate first.
So focus on the pain points.
Exactly. Don't try to optimize everything at once. Pick one thing that bugs you, create a simple automation rule for it, test it thoroughly, and then move on to the next thing.
What about learning resources? Where should people go to get better at this?
The Jira community is incredibly helpful. Lots of people sharing their automation rules and troubleshooting problems. Atlassian also has great documentation and webinars. But honestly, the best way to learn is just to experiment.
Trial and error?
Well, trial and learning. Jira's automation interface is pretty forgiving. You can always edit or disable rules if they're not working the way you expected.
About getting help when you're stuck?
If you're dealing with really complex requirements, or you're implementing automation across a large organization, it might be worth bringing in a Jira consultant. They can help design a strategy that scales and avoid some of the common pitfalls.
That makes sense for bigger implementations, but for most teams, this is something they can tackle themselves?
Absolutely. The learning curve isn't steep, especially if you start with simple rules. And the time investment up front pays dividends later when you're not spending hours on manual updates.
I have to ask, what's the most impressive automation rule you've ever created?
Oh man, I set up this workflow for a client where they were managing product releases across multiple teams. When a release got approved, it automatically created all the necessary tasks in different projects, assigned them to the right people, set up dependencies between tasks, and even integrated with their deployment tools.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It was, but it took what used to be a full day of manual coordination and reduced it to about 15 minutes of reviewing auto-generated tasks. The project manager literally had tears of joy.
That's the dream right there, automation that gives you back time to focus on the important stuff.
Exactly, and that's really what this is all about. It's not just about efficiency, it's about reducing the cognitive load of all those repetitive tasks so you can focus on strategy, problem solving, the work that requires human creativity and judgment.
I said, any final thoughts for people who are just starting their automation journey?
Be patient with yourself. Your first few rules might not work perfectly, and that's okay. Each rule you create teaches you something about how your team works and how to make processes better. It's an iterative process.
And probably start small.
Start small, but think big. Even simple automation can have a huge impact on your day-to-day work experience. And once you see the benefits, you'll start noticing automation opportunities everywhere.
John, this has been incredibly helpful. I feel like I have a clear roadmap for diving into Jira automation now.
That's what I love to hear. And honestly, once you start automating, you'll wonder how you ever managed without it.
Thanks for sharing your expertise with us today. And thanks to everyone for joining us on PM Software and AI Agents. If you want the complete step-by-step guide to Jira automation, including examples and templates, check out the link in the description.
Thanks for having me, Connor. Now, go automate something.
Till next time, remember, if you're doing the same thing manually more than twice, it's time to automate it. Take care, everyone.